Hi, my name is Dan Diaz, Program Specialist here at Consultation Ventures and Acquisitions. What we're going to cover in this short training module is an example phone conversation of an IPC, or an initial phone consultation. Again, the purpose of the IPC is to educate the owner finance buyer on how the approval works, what to expect, costs, terms, interest rates, as well as answer all questions they may have. The average IPC may last anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes or up to an hour, depending on the questions the buyer might have. So let's go ahead and continue on with a sample conversation of what a typical IPC would look like. Hello? How you doing? Hi, hello? How you doing? This is Dan. I'm calling from Consultation Ventures and Acquisitions. We had a scheduled call today around 3 o'clock this afternoon, and that's the reason I'm reaching out to you. How are you doing, Mr. Buyer? Good. So what I'd like to do right now is go over the initial phone consultation with you. I do want to remind you that the terms and conditions that you're about to listen to really are subject to change without notice. And before we move forward, I want to make sure that I do have your permission to record the call. Are you okay if we record this call for training purposes? Wonderful, good. So the basic thing that I really want you to remember about this conversation, Mr. Buyer, is that this is a free, no obligation consultation. The purpose is for you to become educated as to our process and what to expect, the terms, the conditions, the costs, so that once you're ready to move forward and make a decision, you know exactly what to expect. There's no obligation at this point. However, what I would like for you to do is to take careful notes. Do you have a paper and pen in front of you? Good. Now, ideally, we would want to make sure that you and your wife are both listening to the information so that if any of you have any questions along the way, I can personally answer them. Is your wife there with you? Great to hear that. So the biggest thing that I'm going to ask for you is if I say something along the conversation that you don't fully understand, I'd like for you to stop me and ask me about it. Again, the purpose of this conversation is for you to become educated on our process. In order to kind of stay on track, I do want to let you know that this conversation is going to be broken down into 3 components: the approval, the mortgage, and the cost to you. When we talk about the approval, I'm going to let you know exactly what is needed on your part in order to successfully close the transaction. When I talk about the mortgage, you're going to know exactly what benefits our mortgages provide you. And on the last part, when we talk about the cost, we're going to go over exactly what all of this is going to cost to you. So let's begin with the approval. Most approvals, Mr. Buyer, can be done with 16 to 20% total cash to close. So this allows you to do math real simple. If you're looking for, let's say, a $100,000 home, you have to ask yourself, do I have 16 to 20% total cash to close this transaction? That means you're going to need between $16,000 to $20,000. If you're looking for a $200,000 home, you're going to be needing between $32,000 and $40,000. Now, this is total cash to close. This is every penny that you are expected to bring to the transaction. This includes the down payment, the closing costs, prepays, attorneys, filing fees, originations, every imaginable cost associated with you completing these transactions. So that's the first component, 16 to 20% total cash to close. The second component is the ability to make payments, and the third is the verification of a good payer history. I want to talk a little bit about that. This is actually a little bit more complicated. On the ability to make payments, what we do is we hire, once you're ready for a formal approval, we hire a third-party residential mortgage loan originator, RMLO. This is a licensed individual by the state of Texas who will take a look at your credit report and take a look at the minimum monthly payments that you are required to make based upon your credit report. Now, these are our loans. So, for example, credit cards, car payments, things of that nature. What this doesn't include are things like electric bills or groceries or going out money. That's entirely up to you. We just care about the minimum payments that you have to make on a monthly basis. So he's going to take a look at your income, and he's going to subtract your expenses, and he's going to let us know exactly what your ability to make payments is. Let's say, for example, that we learned that you have the ability to make payments on a $200,000 home. Well, If you have the $32,000 to $40,000 to close that transaction, then that'll be your approval, $200,000. Now, if we need to make some adjustments because your ability to make payments doesn't quite match your total cash to close, we'll go ahead and make those changes at that point. Lastly, your verification of good payer history. We recognize that bad things happen to good people, and we understand that. If the reason you have a bad credit score is because of some isolated incident in the past, maybe you and your family went through the passing of a loved one, or maybe a medical situation, a job loss, deployment, something kind of out of your control, and that hit your credit score and it hasn't quite come back, we understand that. However, we really want to make sure that today you're a good payer. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at your credit report. We're not going to focus so much on the credit score, but we're going to look at your collections and late payments. We want to make sure that you have no collections, no late payments, or anything that would really give us a red flag as to the history of good payer that you are. Do you have any questions on the approval part of things, Mr. Buyer? No? Good. Pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and move on to the mortgage side of things. Again, if I say something that you don't fully understand, I really want you to stop me, and I'm happy to explain, whatever term or phrase I just used. Regarding the mortgage or the debts, I want to let you know that this is going to be a very similar mortgage that you would be getting at any other bank or lender, like Wells Fargo or Bank of America. We're going to give you, just like them, up to 30 years to pay, which we believe is important. This will bring your payments down the most that we can. In addition to that, there's going to be 3 major benefits that your mortgage will have at no additional charge. Those 3 additional benefits are the fact that our mortgages have no balloons, no prepayment penalties, and you don't pay PMI with us. I want to go ahead and cover each one of those and explain to you exactly how you're able to really save money with these. First of all, no balloons. No balloons means that we're never going to force you to refinance. A balloon is a situation where a lender tells you, well, yeah, I'll give you up to 30 years to pay, but on year 3 or 4 or 5 or really any other year, they say, we're going to need for you to refinance. There's nothing wrong with them. They're perfectly legal. However, we don't believe that they're fair. And this is the reason we don't believe that they're fair. If you need owner financing now, how do you really know you're not going to need it in 3 or 4 or 5 years when the balloon pops, when you have to refinance the home? You really have no way of knowing that. Now, if the balloon pops and you're required to refinance and you're not able to refinance, you would lose the home, you would lose the down payment, you would lose every single penny that you've paid in mortgage payments, and you would lose any upgrades that you made to the home to that point. We believe that they're just not fair. For that reason, all of our mortgages have no balloons. We will never force you to refinance, and we provide that at no additional charge. The second benefit that we provide at no additional charge is the fact that our mortgages have no prepayment penalties. Now, we do recognize that our mortgages have higher than normal interest rates. We're going to get to that in a moment. And because of that, you're probably going to refinance as quickly as possible. We know that. What we're going to do for you at no additional charge is the fact that anytime you wish to refinance, you can do so without no additional penalty or surcharge or fee or really any kind of charge. So if you wish to refinance 1 month after closing, 1 year later, or maybe 3 or 5 years down the line, you can do so knowing that you don't have to pay anything additional or fee or surcharge in order to pay your unpaid principal balance. Simply give us a call. Ask us what the unpaid principal balance is at the time. We'll let you know what that is. You go ahead and write a check and you go on your merry way. So no prepayment penalties. In addition to that, if you're in a situation where it would be very hard for you to ever refinance, but you want to save on the interest paid, you can pay extra per month, or maybe extra per quarter or per year, or maybe every once in a while when you have a good paycheck. You can do so, drastically shortening the years that you'll end up paying the mortgage. And you can do so without any additional penalization. We want you to know that. The third benefit that we provide at no additional charge is the fact that our mortgages have no PMI. Now, I want to slow things down a little bit. I'd like to ask you, do you know what PMI is? No? Don't worry, most buyers don't. So let me tell you a little bit about what PMI is. PMI stands for Private Mortgage Insurance. Now, private mortgage insurance is a special type of insurance that only benefits the lender. It's not life insurance or homeowners insurance or property insurance or any other insurance that would benefit you, the buyer. Rather, it's a special type of insurance that only benefits the lender. What happens when someone pays PMI is they have to pay a monthly fee or a monthly cost, that's the insurance premium, in order for the loan to be guaranteed. So basically what happens is if they ever have to foreclose on you and the amount that they recoup from the proceeds of the foreclosure isn't enough to pay the unpaid principal balance, they simply submit a claim on the private mortgage insurance and they get everything that they're owed to them. It sounds real good for the lender, except that the buyer has to pay for this insurance. It's called PMI. Anytime a buyer puts less than 20% down, even if they have amazing credit and look great on paper, they still will have to pay PMI. Now, the cost to PMI is very tricky to identify because each case is different. But it's not uncommon or unheard of that a person will have to pay up to $100 or more per month for every $100,000 that they borrow for PMI. So think about it. If you're buying a $200,000 home, that means that you could pay an extra $200, maybe $250, maybe $300 in order to secure that low interest rate and get the deal. We don't believe in PMI. We don't charge you PMI. With us, you're never going to have to pay PMI, potentially saving you thousands of dollars over the life of the mortgage. So to recap, our mortgages give you up to 30 years to pay. They have no balloons, no prepayment penalties, and you don't pay PMI. Do you have any questions on that before we move on to the costs? No? Everything clear? All right, great. Moving along. So all these wonderful, amazing, fantastic benefits, how much are they going to cost you? I want you to write this down. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg. No, I'm kidding. But I do want you to write this down because it is important for you to know what the costs are. There's 3 basic costs. One of them is paid at the beginning, and it's paid in cash by you. The second is paid over time. And the third one is actually paid by the seller. So I want to cover each one of these costs that our transactions carry. The first cost is paid by you, and it's paid up front at the beginning of the transaction before we close. These are called the closing costs. Your closing costs are going to be 6 to 10%. And this covers every penny associated with closing the transaction. Now, this is part of your 16 to 20% total cash to close. It's not in addition to. I want to make that clear. That 6 to 10% closing costs are part of your 16 to 20% total cash to close. The second cost that you have is interest rates, and the third cost are seller paid points. Let's talk about interest rates here for a minute. Now, interest rates is essentially your cost to rent the money, so to speak, or your cost for having borrowed that money and you haven't been able to liquidate the debt. Our interest rates are connected to prime rate. Now, have you ever heard of what prime rate is, Mr. Buyer? No? Don't feel bad. A lot of people don't know what prime rate is. Essentially, prime rate is published on a weekly basis by Wall Street. And what they do is they take a confidential survey of the top largest banks in the country, and they ask them, hey guys, over the last 7 days, what interest rates did you actually close with? Not what were you marketing? What did your advertisements and commercials say? No. What were your actual interest rates that you closed with? They take all of that information, they do their computations, they average them out, and then they publish them, and they call that rate the prime rate. Now, as you can imagine, prime rate does change every week, but because we live in a fairly stable economic fairly stable economy and in a fairly stable economic country, it doesn't change that much. So for example, prime rate could be, hypothetically, 1 week 10.17%. The second week it could be 10.65. The third one 10.50. You're very rarely, I would say never, see that one day prime rate is 5%, and the next week it's 15%. It just doesn't really happen that way. Prime rate has been as high as 18.5%, especially during the summer of the 1980s. You can Google that. That's a sad truth. So anyways, our rates are connected to prime rate. Again, the reason I'm sharing this with you is because I don't have a crystal ball. I have no way of knowing when you're going to close or what the rate is going to be when you do close. But what I can do, and I've already done this, is let you know what were our lowest and our highest rates in the last 30 to 90 days, as well as what our average rate was.